Hey everybody, welcome back to Movies You Missed Podcast, episode 120, Disaster Flicks, one of our favorite genres here at Movies You Missed Podcast. V, how are you today?
I'm very windblown today, John. What about you?
Oh yeah, very windblown. I've certainly been impacted by these films this week. And if that's not a hint to anybody, if you didn't listen to last week's episode, we'll get to what we chose this week very shortly. But before we do, welcome to Movies You Missed Podcast. This is episode 120. Thank you for joining us. If you have not been with us for the last 119 episodes, V and I are veterans of the entertainment industry. We are here to discuss movies that we love and movies that we feel definitely need to be revisited. We also do not do any spoilers of any of the movies that we do here.
One of our favorite parts.
One of the best parts of Movies You Missed Podcast, for sure. But there is one thing that we will spoil, and that is what movies we saw in theaters or on streaming this week. So, V, I'm curious, what did you see?
Well, I saw the same movie in theaters that you did this week, only I went to opening night.
That's true, you did. You saw it before me by about 48 hours.
So why don't you tell our audience what we saw?
Oh, yeah, that's right. We have not said what we saw. We saw Deadpool Wolverine, starring Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman. And spoilers, we don't do them, so we're not going to tell you who cameos.
Nope, we're not, even though there are a lot of them.
There really are, yeah. I had a pretty good time with this movie. I will say the first 20 minutes kind of threw me for a loop. I was a little bit like, hang on a second, this is not at all what I expected based off the trailers that I'd seen. And even still, when it ended, I texted you immediately like that was not what I was expecting at all. But I had a great time. I thought it was awesome to see them both together and just completely shitting on each other. And I can only imagine how much of that was improvised out of complete love because they are definitely friends outside of this whole new franchise. But I had a great time, and the theater seemed to have a good time too. Everybody was quiet, but also, really got into the movie.
Yeah, same. I went to a packed theater. It was really fun. I loved the guy that I was sitting next to because he was laughing as loudly as I was.
Oh, wonderful.
Doesn't happen very often for you and I. And I felt very comforted with how much noise I was making because there was a cameo that I actually screamed about.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. I was so excited. And there are so many jokes. I want to watch it again in theaters, not only for the crowd experience, but also because I missed so many jokes and one-liners because you can't remember all of them, right?
No. Yeah, completely. When I left the theater, I was like, okay, well, I really want to see Twisters, but I kind of want to just go see this again.
Yeah. And it's a good movie. It's certainly fan service. It's a lot like No Way Home in that way.
Yes.
I do think it's a better story than No Way Home and also more memorable. At the 2/3 mark, I thought it went pretty slow. I thought there was a lagging issue and a pacing issue. There's about 10 minutes or so of this movie that could have been edited out that would have made it much tighter, I think.
Okay.
Their time in the void, I think, just took way too long.
Oh, I gotcha. All right. Yeah, I could see that. I didn't mind it so much when I finally realized what exactly was going on for this movie. I kind of just sat back and went along for the ride because I really just did not expect this movie going the direction it went. And not in a bad way. It was a lot of fun. It was very enjoyable.
The storyline was just a lot more serious and...
Yeah, because number 2 is a little serious. We all know what happens at the beginning of number 2. Number 1 is definitely the masterful of all the three. But I do enjoy this one over number 2. I didn't feel this one was as bloated as a story and just as a movie itself.
And the plot lines are a lot more intricate, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
So yeah, overall, I definitely recommend this movie for anyone who has enjoyed the Deadpool movies previously. I know that our listener Monty did not enjoy this movie, which is too bad.
Oh, interesting.
His criticisms are somewhat valid in that it's just pure fan service. I get it, but I would argue that the plot is more there than he led on to be in his review.
Okay.
But again, as someone who's been a fan of comic book movies for going on 30 years now, I really loved this film and thought it was the best of the MCU since...
Oh, wow.
I mean, I wouldn't say since... I might say since Endgame.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of any other movies since Endgame that are any good. Oh,
well, the
Marvels was
good.
amazing. Yeah, the Marvels is better. The Marvels is better.
Yeah,
but
I like the Marvels.
Top 3 since Endgame.
All right, yeah, I can see that. Oddly enough, when I got home after watching Deadpool Wolverine, I started Infinity War because I wanted to watch those two. It just got me in the mood for a Marvel bash fest.
Oh, okay.
So I don't often go to the Marvel catalog, but I don't know. I just, was in the mood.
I put on the original Deadpool after I got home just because I hadn't seen it in a while.
I watched the first two on Thursday and Friday of last week to get ready to watch Deadpool Wolverine.
Well, you did it in the right order.
Yeah.
But yes, so that's what we watched in theaters this week.
Yes, it is. Good time back at the movies. And as we like to say here at Movies and Miss Podcast, please do continue to go to the movies, keep theaters alive, keep physical media alive as well, because over the last few weeks, I've been collecting a couple of new 4Ks, including The Fall Guy on 4K, which was a must-own for me. Mm-hmm. Yes, super excited to have that in my collection. I think it's time now, V, to dive into your pick this week. What do you say?
That's right, I go first this week, which means we're not going in chronological order.
That's true.
Yes, we don't plan our episodes on chronological timeline. However, it is fun when it does line up.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to dive right into my disaster pick of the week. A favorite of mine, I've always really enjoyed it. I like the storyline, I like the premise, and I really enjoyed the actors. So for those of you wondering, I picked 2004's The Day After Tomorrow.
Ooh, who directed The Day After Tomorrow, V?
Roland Emmerich.
Yeah, director of one of the greatest movies of all time, Independence Day.
Although going through his credits, which I will dive into a little bit later in the podcast, he's very much like Ridley Scott, where he's a bit hit and miss.
Oh, that's a very true statement. Absolutely.
I love some of the movies he's made, and then others are just bad. Yep,
absolutely. I think I truly only like 3 of his movies.
Me too.
This being one of them.
Yes. Sorry, Roland, you have made some good ones, but...
Yes, he has, and that's all we'll say.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, man.
Okay. So diving into The Day After Tomorrow. I saw this in theaters. I remember last week you told me that you'd seen this in theaters as well when it came out in 2004. And I love that we're doing this now because Twisters just came out. If you guys listened to last week's episode, you will hear my take on it. And as many of you know who've joined us before, we sure do love disaster movies, as John said at the top of the episode. So what is The Day After Tomorrow about? Well, instead of one specific severe weather event like Twister or your pick this week, The Day After Tomorrow actually focuses on global climate change, and because of that, this movie actually focuses on a climatologist named Jack Hall. He's played by Dennis Quaid, and he actually goes to a climate conference in New Delhi to explain his models and his predictions, because this movie opens up with him and his team drilling ice in the Antarctic. As they're doing that, a giant chunk of the ice shelf actually breaks off. And he mentions this in the conference, that it's the size of Rhode Island, which actually did happen in 1998.
Oh, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
And he is actually going head-to-head with several politicians, including the Vice President of the United States, who looks eerily similar to the Vice President of the United States at the time.
A little bit, yeah.
Roland Emmerich did that on purpose. He cast the president and the vice president to look like George W. Bush and Dick Cheney because he was upset that they had not signed the Kyoto Agreement that was about climate change and curbing a lot of carbon emissions at the time.
Oh, okay.
So yes, he definitely cast that on purpose, which I thought was a really good casting choice because the actor who plays Vice President Becker, his name was Kenneth Walsh. He died 2 years ago, actually. He did a great job, and this movie needed a human villain, as it were.
Yes.
And I think he and Dennis Quaid played off each other really, really well.
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
At this conference, Jack Hall is talking about future predictions and about the North Atlantic current, and the salinity of it, the amount of salt in that current, is what actually gives us very temperate climates in the north, in the northern hemisphere. And he's talking about with polar melting and ice caps breaking off, the salinity of the North Atlantic current is actually going to change over time and disrupt that current, and therefore disrupt our really good weather in the northern hemisphere.
Mm-hmm. What we have found locked in these ice cores is evidence of a cataclysmic climate shift which occurred around 10,000 years ago. The concentration of these natural greenhouse gases in the ice cores indicates that runaway warming pushed the planet into an ice age which lasted 2 centuries.
I'm confused. I thought you were talking about global warming, not an ice age.
Yes, it is a paradox, but global warming can trigger a cooling trend. Let me explain. The northern hemisphere owes its temperate climate to the North Atlantic current. Heat from the sun arrives at the equator and is carried north by the ocean. But global warming is melting the polar ice caps and disrupting this flow. Eventually, it will shut down, and when that occurs, there goes our warm climate.
And that really sets up this movie really well. He gets pushed off the stage, basically, by the politicians and goes back home. And that's where we're introduced to his ex-wife, Lucy, played by Celia Ward, and his son, Sam, played by Jake Gyllenhaal, back when he was super young.
Yeah.
Right around October Sky age.
Yeah, exactly.
And it turns out Jack Hall is super dedicated to his work. That's why he's now divorced. That's why his son doesn't really like him. And his son's actually going up to New York for a decathlete competition because he's on the high school team. And this is basically like facts and trivia competition between high schools.
Yeah.
What I gleaned from the scene. And weather continues to get severe around the globe because, in fact, when Jack was in New Delhi, it was snowing. And the movie continues to show us very weird weather occurrences throughout the world. Crazy hail in Japan. Then a tornado touches down in Los Angeles.
Yeah, that was pretty... That was... special effects wise was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was pretty badass. The tornado takes out the Hollywood sign and things continue to get worse, and Jack is now starting to get calls from other people, including Terry Rapson in the UK, who monitors the North Atlantic current. He's played by Ian Holm, and I absolutely love this character in the film. I think he adds a lot to it.
Yeah, he's great.
So things continue to get worse around the world, and Jack and Terry are talking and tells Jack that the sensors in the North Atlantic current are sending back data that the salinity has actually changed, which is what Jack was predicting. Granted, Jack was predicting this in the next couple hundred years, and this is happening right now, and that is one piece of the movie that is not scientifically accurate. The timeline of this movie is compressed significantly, which Roland Emmerich is like, yeah, of course, I had to do it for the movie.
Definitely.
So all of these crazy weather patterns could happen, but at a much more extended time period. Instead, all of this happens over about a 2-week period. So weather continues to get worse, politicians continue to ignore Jack Hall, and the craziest thing happens because the North Atlantic current shifts. Now we're getting severe hurricanes, but they're appearing over land, which never really happens. And so that's what sets up the real disaster for this movie, because hurricanes come down on North America, on Europe, on Asia, and suck down a bunch of freezing cold air, and that's actually setting up the next ice age. That's what the premise of this movie is.
Yeah.
Jack, were you able to recreate the thermal cycle?
Yes. The storm's rotation is pulling supercooled air all the way down from the upper troposphere.
Shouldn't the air warm up before it reaches ground level?
It should, but it doesn't. The air's descending too rapidly.
Is this an isolated incident?
I'm afraid not. We've located 2 other supercells in addition to the one over Scotland. There's one over northern Canada and another one over Siberia.
And do we know their projected path?
Yes. Our previous estimates of 6 to 8 weeks weren't even close. This one storm is going to change the face of our planet.
All the people in the North are at risk, including Jack's son, Sam. And that's where the tension in the movie comes in. And the disaster scenes in New York City where Sam is are fantastic. I really love the tsunami that comes into New York. I thought that was done really well.
Oh, yeah.
We hadn't really seen that before in New York, so I like that it was new and creative, because usually we have aliens attacking New York or something else a little more insane. But instead, it's water, and Sam and his high school friends have to try to escape. And they end up at the New York Public Library, which I think is a really cool set, really cool location for where they hunker down. And that's actually where Sam gets stuck. Once these floods occur, and like I said, things are getting colder, everything starts to freeze, and now they're really trapped. So the rest of the movie is a lot of severe weather.
Yeah.
That we like to talk about on this show.
Big time.
And also what Jack does to try to rescue Sam, because he is in fact stuck in New York, and above this line that Jack has told the politicians, anywhere north of this line, people are stuck. We can't go get them. It's too dangerous. Any troops you send will die trying to rescue them because it's going to get too cold. People are going to freeze to death if they just walk outside. And that's actually another favorite scene of mine in this movie, when Jack is invited into the Situation Room and tries to explain to them once again what's going on.
The basic rule of storms is that they continue until the imbalance that created them is corrected. In this case, we're talking about a global realignment. The superstorm will last 7 to 10 days. When it's over, ice and snow will cover the entire northern hemisphere. The ice and snow will reflect sunlight. The Earth's atmosphere will restabilize, but with an average temperature close to that of the last ice age.
What can we do about this?
Head as far south as possible.
That is not amusing, Professor. Where do you suggest they go?
The farther south they go, the safer they'll be. Texas, parts of Florida that aren't flooded. Mexico would be best.
Mexico. Maybe you should stick to science and leave policy to us.
Well, we tried that approach. You didn't want to hear about the science when it could have made a difference.
And the rest of the movie is people trying to survive the climate change that's coming, the new ice age that's being set up, and Jack trying to rescue Sam. And I really have a lot of fun with this movie every time I watch it. I haven't seen it in a couple years, but I watched it a ton in the early 2000s. I still really love it and enjoyed my time revisiting it. And so now I'm going to ask John what he thought of the movie, because you hadn't seen it in a while, right?
I had not seen this in a handful of years. I want to say within maybe 5 to 7 years was when I last watched this. I think I was living in Studio City. Yeah, and it might have been on one of the streamers, something like that. I mean, I haven't had cable TV in like 10 years, so it wasn't like, I was flipping through the channels or anything like that. But I remember being like, oh, you know what? I haven't seen this movie in a minute. I did see it in theaters, and I remember going with my buddy Kingsley. We had a great time. The theater was packed, I remember, and we both left the movie, pretty happy with the overall movie itself, like good special effects. It was somewhat similar to Independence Day, where, the opening of the movie introduces like 45 different characters. And
True.
It's just kind of like, okay, well, this is definitely a Roland Emmerich movie where things are about to go to hell. And, we'll see which characters we stick around with for the rest of the movie, because, a lot of times in a movie like this, when you introduce so many characters, a lot of them just kind of fall off.
Oh, yeah. You look at them
see
and
them again.
You're like, oh, he's going to die.
Yeah, and exactly. Yeah, he's going to get hit by the aliens or whatever, or
a giant
the big
billboard
wave coming. Yeah, that was
Angeles.
great. yeah, that was great. I forgot about that moment actually. So when it happened, I was like, "Oh shit!" Like that was a lot of cool moments in the movie. Definitely, some of the dialogue was to be desired. Absolutely, I think Roland Emmerich and the other writer definitely banked on the fact that this one goes a little bit more on the dramatic side, almost kind of like made for TV, kind of similar to kind of how I felt with some moments in What Dreams May Come.
Jack Hall is a bit earnest in this movie.
A little bit, yeah. There were a couple of scenes that I felt that to me felt like they were done in one take, or they were done like right at the end of the day. Like, look, we have the moment, we have the 5 minutes, let's shoot this shot. But again, it didn't take me out of it. The movie was still enjoyable. I own a copy of it, have it on DVD. I don't know if I'd go as far as to get the 4K of this. I don't know how many more times I would watch this one out of all of the other disaster movies that I like. But it's still a fun flick. It's I didn't get emotionally involved with any characters, though, this time around. I don't think I ever have watching this movie, but overall, it does make you think about, how we definitely treat the planet and, Mother Nature coming back at us. It's definitely a far better version of The Happening than M. Night Shyamalan's The Happening, that's for sure.
Or 2012.
Oh, much better than 2012. But, 2012 had some cool destruction and disaster moments as well, but that one's like 2 hours and 40 minutes.
It's
way
so
too long.
Yeah.
Way too long. That's what's kind of funny about 2012 and this movie is they're both global, and it's not like, the Day After Tomorrow is just stuck in New York City. So, again, this is a better movie than 2012 and a far better movie than 10,000 BC.
Oh, God, what a terrible movie that was.
Yeah, the movie was horrendous, but again, going back to the movies I do like by Emmerich, I love Stargate. Obviously, I'm a big fan of Independence Day, like this one, and I don't hate Independence Day Resurgence. Again, still a fun flick, and I'm glad that you picked it.
Good. I'm glad to hear that you had fun revisiting it. And the character I actually really connected with in this movie was Celia Ward's character of Lucy Hall.
Ah.
I thought she did a great job. Her scenes, especially at the hospital, I thought were subdued enough to not be trying to force tension to, or emotions down our throat, right? And when she's upset about her son Sam, I really felt that versus Jack Hall's being upset, right?
Right.
I thought she really carried the emotional weight of this movie in the right way versus the two male leads. So she was always my favorite character in this film.
Nice.
I also thought Ian Holm had the right gravitas for his role too. And even though he's in the movie for like 5 minutes, I still feel for his character a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
That's actually one of my favorite lines in the movie, just because it carries so much weight, but it's subdued enough to really tug at your heartstrings.
Yeah, no, there's a moment where he and his two counterparts were hunkering down for, the big wave of destruction that's coming, and one of the guys pulls out a bottle of Belvany 12 Doublewood, and I love that scotch, so I liked that moment for sure.
That was actually one of the pieces of trivia that I had written down for this movie. I wanted to make sure to tell you what kind of scotch it was if you hadn't noticed. But of course you did.
I did. I absolutely did, yeah. I'm a big Belvany fan. That's some wonderful single malt scotch.
It's a double wood 12-year-old. Is that pretty good?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
A lot of single malts usually land in the 12-year mark, and if they're double wood, that means they were aged in 2 different barrels. Oh. So, yeah, that one's good. Belvany has a wonderful lineup. My favorite one is the 17-year double wood, but they discontinued that one a few years ago, which was very heartbreaking. And then their Week of Peat is amazing, too. It's really nice and peaty and smoky.
Nice. Okay, well, I'm glad that they were accurate in the quality of scotch that they picked for that scene.
Definitely, yeah. And they actually showed it to you, kind of like in Constantine. You know, he's drinking the Ardbeg. Mm-hmm. So it's like, ooh, sweet, fantastic. So maybe next time when you come to visit, I might have a bottle of 12-year double wood, and you can give it a try.
Maybe, although I don't like dark liquors.
Yeah. Weirdo. As I sip on my Old Forester Statesman out of my Whiskey by the Fire glass. Cheers, Steve.
That's a cool glass.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he sent it to me. He got it etched with his little logo on it. It's pretty awesome.
Oh, thanks, Steve.
Yeah, Steve.
And I think the visual effects for this movie held up pretty damn well.
They did.
There are a couple pieces that I don't think held up great, like the wolves.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was a little bad.
But the bigger set pieces really did. All of the water coming into New York, the tornadoes in Los Angeles. I thought the grander scale visual effects were really, really good.
I agree, yeah. The wolves were very comical, unfortunately. And they're supposed to be threatening, and it didn't really work.
No,
but
it didn't.
that massive wave coming over the Statue of Liberty was pretty cool. That whole destruction was pretty badass.
Yeah.
It's so weird to say. It's like, oh, look, it's like San Andreas. San Francisco's getting destroyed. It's so fucking cool. Yeah. But it's still like, yeah, it's fucking cool. Like,
It is.
This stuff is supposed to happen after humanity is pretty much gone, so we're just throwing humans into the mix of it now.
Yeah. And I think San Andreas is a really good comparator to this movie because I really like the weather threats and the destruction of this film, but the emotional pieces and the performances of San Andreas, I think, eclipse this one.
Oh, I will agree with you on that for sure.
So I think it depends on what mood you're in for a destruction movie to decide which one you would pick out of those two.
Very true.
I mean, Carla Gugino would tip the scales for me any day, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah. Most definitely. Nothing wrong with Emmy Rossum. I worked with her on Shameless. She's very sweet, but yeah, Carla Gugino. Mm-hmm.
She's more age appropriate for us too, so that helps.
That's true. Yeah. And Kylie Minogue is in San Andreas as well. So
yes, you're welcome for that piece of trivia that I told you.
So cool.
That was so random. So good. But back to The Day After Tomorrow. I'm really glad you enjoyed it. And as we always say, no matter what we feel about the movies, at least we're going to have a really good conversation about them.
Oh, yeah.
I did really like the score in this movie, too.
It did have a fun score. I liked it as well.
Harold Klosser composed it. He hasn't really done much else of note, even though he has composed a lot of other TV and movies. But I wanted to give him a shout out because I did think the score was really good.
I agree.
And as I said, Dennis Quaid plays Jack Hall in this film. He is the star of it. He is also top billing. We talked about him 100 episodes ago.
Oh!
Because he stars in your pick of Dragonheart for episode 19.
Yes, he does. Such a great movie. That one I do need it on 4K. It's just so expensive right now. For some reason, it's like $40.
What? No.
Yeah, I know.
It's like the Last Mohican soundtrack being on vinyl for like $60 right now.
Yeah.
It sucks.
Gosh, that's insane.
Yeah. But it won't be the last time we talk about Dennis Quaid because there are a lot of other really good movies he's been in that both John and I love. I'm introducing John to The Right Stuff, which is a fantastic movie that's coming up in the near future.
Oh, yeah. I'm looking forward to that one. I have that movie. I've just never watched it.
Oh, perfect. I love being able to introduce you to movies that you already own.
Yeah, I know. It's great.
It's happened a couple times.
It has. And it kind of makes me laugh, too, thinking back when we were doing Ben-Hur and Lawrence of Arabia. I found my copy of Lawrence of Arabia, but I paid to rent it. I was literally going through my list of movies, and I was like, oh, shit, I have a copy.
Still worth every penny, though.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, masterpiece.
Awesome. So, God, that movie is one of, I think, the top 5 movies I was so happy that you loved. There's just some movies I'm like, man, this is, like you said, such a masterpiece. Like Born on the 4th of July. I'm just on the edge of my seat going, God, I really hope he loves this because it's so goddamn good. And I'm just so happy when they resonate with you.
Me too. Wasn't a waste of my time.
Yeah, exactly. Which is
like Major League.
Shut up! You did not hate that film.
I'm just kidding.
I have an audio record of you admitting you don't hate it. But back to Dennis Quaid. He's also in Inner Space, Great Balls of Fire, a movie I love called Undercover Blues, which is very underrated.
Oh.
He does a great job playing Doc Holliday and Wyatt Earp. He's in a crime movie called Switchback that'll probably be on this list based on the conversation you and I had about Robin Williams and Insomnia a couple weeks ago. Just because we were reminded of how much we do love crime thrillers, so might be on the list in the future. And then also he's in Any Given Sunday, which is ridiculous. Also speaking of Al Pacino.
Oh yeah, Any Given Sunday. I've seen that movie one time. I don't remember a lot of it.
I've seen it twice, once in theaters and once when it was on TV a couple years later. It's completely over the top.
Oh yeah.
So I don't think I'll revisit it. Another Oliver Stone movie that we've talked about that actually isn't very good. Similar to Roland Emmerich and Ridley Scott, Oliver Stone is a little bit hit and miss too.
Yeah, very much so.
Dennis Quaid is also in Traffic. He plays a very slimy lawyer. He does a great job at it. If you want to weep like you never have before, watch A Dog's Purpose. It's like Marley and Me or any other dog movie.
That's right, A Dog's Purpose. I wanted to see it. I never got around to it though.
Yeah, he has been in a couple of tearjerkers like that in the last couple years. I'm like, dude.
Yeah.
Like we always say, we only care when the dog dies.
Yep.
He's also in a good baseball movie called The Rookie.
Oh, I never saw that one either.
Oh, you might like that one. Might put that on the list.
All right.
But I want to introduce you to Moneyball first.
Oh, yes. I've heard great things about Moneyball.
John and I both love Frequency. It's going to be on the list in the future. And my favorite role of his, just because he's so good looking in it, and it's a very sweet movie, he's in The Parent Trap.
All right.
As I said, Jake Gyllenhaal plays his son Sam. We've talked about him a couple times on this podcast because not only was he in my recent pick of Prisoners from episode 103, but he was also in Clarissa's pick from episode 96 of our reviewer request episode because she picked October Sky.
That's right. Yes, October Sky. Thank you again, Clarissa, for that pick. That was such a great revisit of that movie for both of us.
Yes, and neither of us had seen it in a couple decades.
Yeah.
Celia Ward, as I said, plays the ex-wife and mother to Sam. Her name is Dr. Lucy Hull in this film. She's a pediatric doctor, and most of you would probably recognize her as Harrison Ford's wife in The Fugitive.
Yes. Oh.
She's only in it for a couple minutes, and she's so good.
Yeah, she's really damn good.
Apparently, she plays the president in Independence Day Resurgence.
She does indeed.
Okay, I will take your word for it since I haven't seen that film.
Oh, yeah.
She plays House's ex-wife in the show House.
Does she really?
Yeah, she's really good.
I do not remember her in House. You know, I kept up with House up until I think season 6, and then I kind of started to fall off.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't keep up with
ridiculous.
it towards the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there was those 6 seasons, though, were gold.
Great.
Like,
yeah.
amazing.
As I always say, shows have about 6 seasons worth of good material.
Yeah.
Everything she did in it was great, and she also starred in a show called Once and Again. And as you said, Emmy Rossum is in this film. She plays Sam's classmate, Laura. She gets stuck in New York as well. She starred in the movie version of Phantom of the Opera.
Unfortunately.
God, that movie sucked.
It's really bad.
It's so bad. But you've worked with her on Shameless. She stars in that as the oldest daughter.
Yes.
She also appears in Mystic River.
Oh. Boy, oh boy, oh boy.
That movie.
Oh, man. I'll never forget my mom taking me to see that movie.
Oh, my God.
She had seen it, her and my dad went, and for whatever reason, I was just in, the trailer was like, yeah, I want to see Mystic River. And my mom, like I said, my mom's taken me to some obscure movies that I never thought she'd want to watch with me. Mystic River, Lucky Number 11, She's All That. We used to go to a lot of movies together, and that needs to change. I've invited my mom to a lot of movies over the last year and a half, but there are none that she wants to see.
Oh, bummer.
And the last one I actually invited my mom to was Knock at the Cabin, and then she's like, what's that about? And I told her, she goes, oh, that sounds interesting. And I think she read something online about it and was like, I don't want to see that. And I was like, all right, fine.
Bummer.
But yeah, it is what it is.
Dash Mihawk plays Jason, who is one of Jack Hall's colleagues in this film. I wanted to bring it up because we've actually talked about him before in episode 4.
That's right.
He appears in your pick of Romeo and Juliet. He plays Romeo's best friend, Benvolio. He's so good in that film.
He is so, everybody is in
yeah,
Romeo
that's
and Juliet,
true.
But his whole thing at the gas station, I love it. I love it. And I've had the pleasure of working with Dash on Ray Donovan season 5.
I was going to ask if you guys cross paths because he is in Ray Donovan for a lot of episodes.
Yeah, I walked on set and I was looking at the call sheet and I didn't recognize his name. name, but he came out of his trailer, and I was like, shit, it's Benvolio.
Yeah.
I never actually talked to him about Romeo and Juliet, but he was a very nice guy.
Probably because everybody does.
Oh, I'm sure they do.
What you should have done is talk to him about him being in the Thin Red Line.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, that was a missed opportunity, but we'll talk about that when I choose Thin Red Line coming up in several episodes from now.
Exactly. So that's Dash.
I love Dash when Janet shows up and Frank and him are basically, they're not really trying to compete with each other, but Dash is trying to compete with Frank because he's really attracted to Janet and Janet's really talking more to Frank than Dash's character. And that one moment where they're in the car and she keeps asking questions and Frank starts to answer, but Dash like pops in like from behind the seat. That whole moment was pretty good. I liked that.
Yeah, their dynamic in this movie is really good. And as we've said, Roland Emmerich directed this film. He also wrote it. The other movies that he has written are Stargate, Independence Day, and its sequel, Godzilla, 10,000 BC.
Oh, that's right, Godzilla.
Yeah.
Oh, the How Did This Get Made Godzilla episode is absolutely fantastic. If nobody's listened to that one, I could not stop laughing. It was so fantastic.
His most recent film that he wrote and directed is Moonfall, which you've seen.
I like Moonfall. Moonfall's a lot of fun.
Okay.
Halle Berry, Patrick Wilson, Sam Tarley from Game of Thrones is in it. And that's another movie where they introduce like 50 characters in the first 15 minutes, and all of them fall off except for like the final
4.
6. Yeah, it's ridiculous. But it's a lot of fun still.
That's his shtick. Roland Emmerich, who's from Germany, directed Universal Soldier, Stargate, Independence Day, as we both know.
Yes.
And his sequel, of course, Godzilla. He directed The Patriot, which
That's right, he did.
A terrible movie, actually.
Okay, so, man, it's funny. I do forget about The Patriot.
Yeah. Also known as Braveheart 2.
Yes, we talked about The Patriot several episodes ago, and I remember it's another one of those movies that feels like there's a lot of made-for-TV dialogue.
Oh, yeah.
In The Patriot. But overall, the battles are great.
They are. He also directed 10,000 BC, 2012, White House Down, which also sucks.
White House Down was not good. Olympus Has Fallen was far better.
As we always say.
Nothing against Channing Tatum or Jamie Foxx, but
no, I'm in love with Jamie Foxx.
White House Down was what?
I said no, I'm in love with Jamie Foxx.
Oh no, yeah, he's great. I mean, love him in Soul and a whole bunch of movies that he's in. But yeah, that was not a good one.
And he also directed Midway.
Midway was not bad. I think that was good for a one-time watch, and I've wrestled with like getting the 4K because it truly is beautiful to look at, and a lot of the battles are awesome. I just kind of wish they went a little bit farther and made it R-rated and made it really brutal. Because it's PG-13. It has that like Medal of Honor video game thing where you're shooting people and there's no blood. It's like, give us a little bit of realism, but it still was a beautiful movie to look at. And the cast wasn't bad either. I think Dennis Quaid's in that movie also.
Yeah. Stefan Ramstorff is a professor of physics and oceans. He actually wrote a paper about this film.
Did he really?
It's posted online. I really enjoyed reading it. He actually showed the same diagram of the North Atlantic Current at a conference in 1998 that's shown at the beginning of this film by Jack.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, so that part was realistic. As I've iterated about the scientific aspect of this film, the timeline was sped up, is what Stefan said.
Right.
Some of the events, like the flood in Manhattan, wouldn't have been caused by the current. That wave would only be caused by like an earthquake and tidal wave.
Oh, okay.
But he said the most inaccurate piece of this movie is actually just the timeline, not a lot of the crazy extreme weather events, which I thought was kind of cool.
Yeah, that is.
He also wanted to note that Roland Emmerich did such a good job of demonstrating the politics of climate change and how muddled they all are and how there's two sides of it. And with his experience talking to world leaders, he thought that was demonstrated really well in this movie.
Awesome.
Yeah, so there are some accurate pieces to The Day After Tomorrow, which is always fun to hear.
Yeah.
And in keeping with the movie's ecological theme, Jack Hall drives an electric car, and this is back in 2004 when they weren't as popular. Roland Emmerich paid $200,000 from his own pocket to make the production carbon neutral.
Wow.
It was the first time it had ever been done in Hollywood.
Really?
Mm-hmm. All of the carbon dioxide emitted by the production was offset by the planting of trees and investments in renewable energy.
Very cool.
Yeah, Roland Emmerich, ahead of its time.
Definitely.
And the Red Cross put up several stands at theaters across the U.S. featuring pamphlets with information on what to do and how to keep safe during tornadoes, floods, and blizzards, which is cool. I should probably prep for a couple of those.
Yeah, maybe we all should.
Right. Roland Emmerich started writing the screenplay for The Day After Tomorrow while he was filming The Patriot.
Oh, sweet.
But he stopped writing after 9/11, thinking a disaster movie was inappropriate after such an event.
Okay. Well, good on him on that.
Yeah, which is why the film came out in 2004.
Yeah.
He originally had written the script, though, that Sam and his friends were 11-year-olds.
Oh.
But he changed them to high school students for Jake Gyllenhaal.
Oh, cool.
Because Roland Emmerich saw him in October Sky.
Hey.
And asked,
all right.
Yeah, and asked if we could get Jake to play a 17-year-old. Similar to Independence Day, over 1,000 digital artists were used in the making of this film.
1,000? Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah. 9 special effects houses worked on it.
9? Good Lord. Wow.
And in the first of its kind, the breath appearing out of the actors' and actresses' mouths in the cold scenes were put in afterwards with CGI.
Yeah, that was obvious.
Yes, it was like I said, it was the first time it was ever done. But
yeah,
it has proven to be a more practical way of doing that than freezing the set. So a lot of movies do it now.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. And South Park creators Trey Parker and Matt Stone got a copy of the script during its pre-production.
Really?
They planned to secretly shoot the same movie with puppets instead of actors, word for word.
Oh.
And release it on the same day.
No way.
After their lawyer heard of these plans, he convinced them to abandon it because he said no one would ever release it.
Well,
they'd get sued.
Well, that I can understand, but they did kind of get him back with Team America World Police, especially the opening of the movie.
Yes, that's true. And as I've always said, instead of remaking films outright like The Lion King or having legacy sequels like Twisters, what we should do is remake movies with puppets.
Yes, we
It
should.
would be a far better use of our time.
I completely agree.
It was nominated for a BAFTA for Best Visual Effects.
Nice.
Which was deserved. I'm actually surprised it didn't win.
Yeah.
And The Day After Tomorrow came out on May 28th of 2004.
That was just over 20 years ago.
Yeah, so it's good timing we're talking about it because it did just celebrate its 20th anniversary. It had a budget of $125 million.
Damn. That's a big budget.
It is, and it had the biggest opening weekend gross for a movie that did not ever reach #1 in the box office.
Wow.
Which was surprising, actually.
Yeah.
But it only ended up making $187 million in the United States, which is not great.
Oh, damn.
However, worldwide it made $553 million on a $125 million budget, so it did very well. And
that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Thankfully, it did really well. And it brought in an extra $110 million on DVD sales.
Oh, shit. Wow. That's cool.
Yeah. I do really wish that films had an opportunity to make money back in physical releases still, like The Fall Guy or A Gentlemanly Warfare that didn't do very well in the box office this year, but they're such good movies, and the box office is really just a one-shot deal these days, which is such a bummer.
It really is. It's very unfortunate.
It is, but the good news is that The Day After Tomorrow was able to take advantage of it being released in 2004 with those DVD sales, including one from John, apparently.
Yeah.
And if you want to watch this film in 2024, of course it's on a streaming service. It's now on Hulu. You can watch it there. And I'm really glad that you enjoyed revisiting this film.
I did have a good time. It was a fun one. I'd watch it again in the future.
Yay! Okay, good. That's always a good sign. Well, all right. I think it's time for us to brace ourselves and dive into John's disaster movie pick.
Yay!
Take it away, John.
All right, I shall. This movie, for those of you that were listening last week, know what movie this is. We've talked about it a lot on this podcast, and it's taken 120 episodes to get to it. This movie came out July 1st of 1998. Just before this movie was released, there was another movie of similar storyline that had just come out.
Not as good.
Not even half as good, but still a good movie. Like, there's nothing wrong with Deep Impact. It's not the worst
fun.
movie. It's fine. Yeah, it's good.
I like
that
Morgan
whole
Freeman as the
sequence,
president.
Oh, yeah. And the whole sequence where the one piece goes, that does land on Earth is really intense. Like, that is
them running away from it on that
wild.
freeway, I will always remember that scene. That was really good.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So if that's not a hint for those of you that were not listening to last week's episode, my pick for this week is the magnificent masterpiece, Armageddon, directed by Michael Bay, written by Jonathan Hensley and J.J. Abrams, Tony Gilroy, and Shane Salerno. This film stars Bruce Willis, Ben Affleck, Steve Buscemi, Will Patton, Liv Tyler, Michael Clark Duncan, Owen Wilson, William Fichtner, Peter Stormare,
Yeah,
Keith David, Chris Ellis, and Jason Isaacs.
God damn, it's such a good cast.
Such a great... Oh, and I completely forgot to mention Billy Bob fucking Thornton.
Oh, he's so good in this movie.
He's so good in this movie. And there's actually a really great piece of trivia about Billy Bob Thornton. After him having seen this movie, he wrote it off for a very long time. He did not like his performance. He thought it was a terrible movie.
No.
He revisited it again about a decade after it came out and is on record saying, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. This movie's fucking awesome. I don't care what anybody says. I've loved this movie since I saw it in theaters with my dad. We went like late July, went to the mall movie theater and saw it. I'll never forget the opening sequence. We're just going to listen to it right now.
This is the Earth at a time when the dinosaurs roamed a lush and fertile planet. A piece of rock just 6 miles wide changed all that. It hit with the force of 10,000 nuclear weapons. 1 trillion tons of dirt and rock hurtled into the atmosphere, creating a suffocating blanket of dust the sun was powerless to penetrate for 1,000 years. It happened before. It will happen again. It's just a question of when.
Now, for those of you that don't know who Charlton Heston is, he is Judea Ben-Hur, who we discussed several episodes ago. He opens up this movie for us with that awesome little intro. And I remember as a kid, like, being terrified of this opening, especially when that rock hits the planet. Visually stunning, like, absolutely spectacular. And I loved the opening credits to this movie as well. Well, not the opening credits, just the opening title of this movie. It made me think that Bruckheimer really, really, really loved the way that Emmerich did the opening titles for Independence Day. And it's like, let's one-up that shit and actually blow up the word Armageddon with a really badass explosion. And they sure as hell did, because it's so awesome. I just love the opening. Just everything about this movie I fucking love. I have so much trivia, so I'm going to do my best to break this movie down as quickly as possible. There's an asteroid headed to Earth. Oil drillers get recruited by NASA to go up into space and drill a hole on this Texas-sized asteroid and put a nuclear bomb into it and basically save the world.
With the proximity of the asteroid and no prep time, none of our primary plans can work.
Why don't we just send up 150 nuclear warheads and blast that rock apart?
Terrible idea.
Was I talking to you?
This is Dr. Ronald Quincy from research, pretty much the smartest man on the planet. You might want to listen to him.
General, if you consider your target, composition, dimensions, sheer velocity, you could fire every nuke you've got at her and she'd just smile at you and keep on coming.
You should know that the president's scientific advisors are suggesting that a nuclear blast could change this asteroid's trajectory.
I know the president's chief scientific advisor. We're at MIT together. And in a situation like this, you really don't want to take the advice from a man who got a C- in astrophysics. The president's advisors are, wrong. I'm right.
Hitting the rock from the outside won't do the job.
Imagine a firecracker in the palm of your hand. You set it off, what happens? Burn your hand, right? You close your fist around the same firecracker and set it off. Your wife's going to be opening your ketchup bottles the rest of your life.
Are you suggesting that we blow this thing up from the inside?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
How?
We drill. We bring in the world's best deep core driller.
This moment in a little bit later on in the movie, about 40 minutes into the movie. This movie is 2.5 hours long, but it does not feel like it. This movie feels like it's like a 20-minute movie. It just goes so fast. It's so beautifully paced. Every cut in this movie lasts about 1.5 seconds. Like, that is how much editing is done in this movie. I would love to see the timeline of the editor that cut this movie together, just to see how intense it looked, how insane the undertaking was for this editor and for everybody involved, because apparently this movie they shot in 16 weeks. Whoa. Michael Bay was under a huge undertaking to get this movie done. Everybody involved had a great time, except for Bruce Willis.
Really?
Yeah, Bruce Willis apparently did not have a very good time making this movie because he didn't really get along with Michael Bay. He didn't like the way Michael Bay was directing the project, so he refused to work with Michael Bay after this movie was finished. Which is unfortunate, but at the same time, that's kind of happened with a lot of other actors with Michael Bay.
Well, and it happens to all of us, right? You will work with somebody and stylistically it just doesn't align, so you don't want to work with them again.
It's kind of like going back to The Rock with Ed Harris being like, he didn't like a lot of the close-ups and the way that Michael Bay was doing the coverage, so they never worked together again. I feel like that's similar to how Bruce Willis kind of felt. I didn't really...
There are a lot of close-ups of Bruce Willis in this movie.
Oh, yeah, definitely. There's a lot of close-ups of everyone in this movie. It's literally just like, there's no headroom either. Like, they're literally cut off at the forehead, so you kind of see their shoulders up until pretty much like the top line of the forehead. But anyway... Getting back a little bit more of the breakdown of this movie, I know I just gave you 3 sentences. Yeah, that's really all you need for this movie. And, again, this ensemble cast literally is just so much fun to watch. So after all of that, we are introduced to Harry Stamper, who runs an oil rig out in the middle of the ocean. Now, this is an actual oil rig that they shot on, a $400 million oil rig they got permission to shoot on.
That's cool.
And they brought the cast out there. Yeah, they shot on this thing for several days.
Literally, because there's a shotgun involved.
Yeah, exactly. I'll get into that in just a second because I want to talk about a little bit of the geography of where they were. They were shooting this outside of just off the coast of Galveston, Texas.
Okay.
So they were really out there. And, that's the cool thing, similar to The Rock, similar to a lot of Michael Bay movies. Practical locations, and we'll get into the actual practical NASA locations that the producers convinced NASA to allow them to shoot on, which makes this movie so historically accurate, yet one of the most inaccurate movies that NASA's ever been involved in. This movie is shown, this movie is actually shown to NASA Management Training Program trainees, and they are tasked with trying to find all of the errors that are in this movie. So far, people have been able to find 168 errors in the making and the production of this movie. Now, of course, this is a movie. It has to be done similarly to Day After Tomorrow. They have to condense the time frame, right? Yeah. They have 18 days before the asteroid hits Earth. So, yeah, of course, it's just over 2 weeks before this size of Texas piece of rock out in space smashes into us, and it's what they call a global killer. I love that whole moment, too, between the president and Truman.
What is this thing?
It's an asteroid, sir.
How big are we talking?
Sir, our best estimate is 97.6 billion.
It's the size of Texas, Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
Dan, we didn't see this thing coming?
Well, our object collision budget's $1 million. That allows us to track about 3% of the sky. And begging your pardon, sir, but it's a big-ass sky.
And the ones this morning?
Those are nothing. They're the size of basketballs and Volkswagens, things like that.
Is this going to hit us?
We're efforting that as we speak, sir.
What kind of damage are we?
Damage? Total, sir. It's what we call a global killer. The end of mankind. Doesn't matter where it hits. Nothing would survive, not even bacteria.
I like this moment because you would think now, of course, NASA trainee program guys have found 168 errors in this movie, but it still feels like this is how it would go down, right? Just in the movie universe. Like, they go to Hubble telescope to get all these pictures. The president is, in the Oval Office or wherever he is in the
of course they
in the White House,
blowing it up with a nuclear weapon.
Yeah, of course, similar to Independence Day, right? Let's just nuke the bastards.
But it's so U.S. focused. One of the things I thought was missing from this film is arguing with other world leaders about who's going to do it. And they do make a mention much later on in the movie that this is a cooperation between Russia, China, and America to send these guys up there. But it's a passing comment that kind of addresses it. But yeah, this is a very U.S.-centric movie.
Oh, very much so, yeah. And that's fine. There's a lot of movies like that. Every other country makes movies similar to this, and they are the saviors of the world. So why not?
Mm-hmm. And it's Michael Bay. What do you expect?
And it's Michael Bay, exactly. And we got Bruce Willis. We got John McClane, for crying out loud. Of course he's going to save the world. Or is he? No spoilers here, everybody. If you haven't seen Armageddon, I don't know where you've been for the last 26 years, but I'll tell you where I've been for the last 26 years, and that's watching Armageddon once every year and a half, because I love this movie. And not only just the movie is awesome, cast is great, lots of great comedy that does not feel forced, similar to Independence Day, Men in Black, Jurassic Park. This was one of those 90s movies that had a lot of heart to it, Speaking of heart, When we meet Harry Stamper, we're introduced to AJ, played by Ben Affleck. We find out that AJ is in love with Harry's daughter, played by Liv Tyler. Liv Tyler actually turned the movie down twice before she ended up taking the role of Grace. There were several other actresses that were in consideration. Denise Richards was one. Which
no.
Really see,
no,
especially after Starship Troopers and Wild Things. You know,
she's a terrible actress.
She's not great, but she's
also
very nice to look at.
Can you picture? It'd be exactly like The Day After Tomorrow, the James Bond movie. Picturing her on an oil rig and being an oil rigger's daughter. It's not a fit.
Yeah. She doesn't look like she's the type of woman that would get her nails dirty. You know, like nothing again against Denise Richards, but Liv Tyler has a little bit of that ruggedness
actually a very nice
on.
person. Yeah,
same. Yeah,
and even though she's a nepo baby, Liv Tyler is a really good actress.
She is. She's great. Yeah, she's awesome. Not just in Lord of the Rings, but
or That Thing You Do.
This movie and that thing. Well, she's great in That Thing You Do. Yeah,
Stealing Beauty.
Love her in. Never saw Stealing Beauty, but I love her in Empire Records.
Yep.
You know, she's an all-around very good actress. Mila Jovovich was in consideration to play Grace.
She can't carry an English accent enough, especially in 1998.
No, all right. I don't know. I think looks-wise,
she's also
she
too pretty.
Pretty good.
Wait. But then she plays Bruce's love interest in
That's right, yeah, in Fifth Element. Yeah. She's Lilu. That's right.
So weird.
That would have been a little strange. That's right, yeah. Oh, all of a sudden, yeah, she's playing his daughter. Maybe that's why she was like, you know what, I just made out with him. I don't want to play his daughter.
Let's not do that.
Another actress that I'm sure you would like, Robin Wright, was in consideration to play Grace. I thought she could have done a pretty good job.
She could, but she's, no offense, too old for that role.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I suppose that's also true. I guess, and in Pseudo Universe, maybe all three of them could have done it and it would have been fine, but I do like Liv Tyler. And obviously, the soundtrack has several Aerosmith songs, and that's always great. And their song that was written by Diane Warner was actually nominated for an Oscar that year. They didn't win, but it's still pretty cool. Aerosmith was invited to the editing room to see some of the footage of this movie in completion, and they were incredibly impressed with it. I'm sure Liv Tyler being in it had a little bit of leeway.
One way or another, either Aerosmith being the music helped Liv Tyler or vice versa.
Right, yeah, exactly. So after they saw the footage, the band agreed that they would do the song, and they recorded the song 3 days later, went on to literally be like the song of 1998 and of just about every fucking wedding up until like 2005. And I remember people asking me, like, oh, are you going to do I Don't Want to Miss a Thing from Armageddon for your song at your wedding? I'm like, no, I'm not going to be that cliche at all, as much as I love Aerosmith. And I do like that song. That was not even in my mind at all, because I'd literally been to so many weddings, and that was the song.
Been stuck in my head for the last 3 days.
Yeah, good. It's a good song.
But you know who I actually think could have been a good actress to play his daughter in the movie?
Who's that?
Alicia Silverstone.
Ooh, yeah, she could have been good. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could get down with that. I could be down with Alicia Silverstone as Grace. Definitely. So after we find out about this love interest of AJ and Harry's daughter, Harry's really not about this because AJ's still the young and up-and-coming oil driller, and
he's such a little asshole in this movie.
Yeah, he's a little bit of a prick, and he's very arrogant, and he plays that role very well.
He's
in this
a know-it-all.
Movie. He really, really lands it very, very well. After the introduction of that, we are also introduced to Steve Buscemi's character, Will Patton's character,
God.
Michael Clark Duncan, and a couple other guys on the oil rig. Michael Clark Duncan plays Bear. This is the first time that I'd ever seen Michael Clark Duncan. I'll never forget his first line in the movie. Just want to give my man a head start. That's all. When Harry's chasing him around with the shotgun, he has that huge wrench that literally is the size of his arm, and I was like, how is he holding that thing? Yeah, God, it's so massive.
Make your peace with God, AJ!
Oh, so hilarious. I'm temporarily insane, Rock. It's all right. I love that moment, too. Rockhound, played by Steve Buscemi. Steve Buscemi was really excited about playing Rockhound because when they pitched him the role, Rockhound was going to be a very smart, very talented geologist and like a heroic type of a character. After he was cast, the writers decided to make his character a little bit more on the sleazy side, and Steve Buscemi was a little bit sad about that and very insane. But yeah, it still worked out. I thought Steve Buscemi was fantastic in this movie as Rockhound.
My favorite part of the movie, every single scene that Steve Buscemi is in, and he's really, really good at playing a brilliant guy because they kept that part of his character in. He's total hound dog, hence the nickname, as you said. But, oh my gosh, when he's like, because I'm a genius, like, I believed it, right? Everything he does in this movie is hysterical. Favorite part of the movie.
Awesome. Captain America here blew the landing by 26 miles.
I'm not getting a damn thing on the inertia nav system.
I know where we are.
Please step away. Radio signal's dead.
Flipping the backup generator. Radio signal's gonna be cut in half till we get main power back.
We're in segment 202, lateral grid 9, site 15H32, give or take a few yards. Captain America here blew the landing by 26 miles.
How the hell do you know that?
Because I'm a genius.
The gauges will not read. They're all peaked like we're plugged into some magnetic field.
Well, who on the spaceship wants to know why?
By all means.
The reason we were shooting for grid 8 is because thermographics indicated that grid 9 was compressed iron ferrite. Which means you landed us on a goddamn iron plate.
So great, so awesome. I'm glad that he's your favorite part. He's definitely keeps the movie light, you know?
Yes.
As much comedy also comes in when we are introduced to Peter Stormare, who's been on the Russian space station for 18 months and has not actually had any human interaction for over a year. He is awesome in this movie.
Sounds good to me, honestly. I'm a little
kind of sounds like fun, yeah. But I love when Truman's like telling them while they're docking with the Russian space station, like, now this cosmonaut's been up there for 18 months by himself. He might be a little off. And then we're introduced to him. He's like, hey, Houston, hello. Like, I love that. So great. He gets to use one of his accent as a Russian this time instead of, like, where's he actually from? So this time we actually get Peter Stormare actually having a country for his character.
Yeah. And, oh, God. The difference between that character and the devil and Constantine really shows his range.
Yeah.
Props to Peter Stormare. He is an unsung, talented actor.
Absolutely.
That's why we love talking about him on this show. We need to give him props.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. All the time. I love his line. I love a line later on when AJ asks him if he'd ever heard of Evel Knievel. He's like, oh, I never saw Star Wars. So ridiculous. But so great. And that whole thing, like, you're a bunch of cowboys. Like that whole, I am a Russian hero. I love all that stuff. Just
He's great.
As you can tell, I absolutely love this movie. So after they dock with the Russian space station and meet this cosmonaut, they all, more disaster hits. Because it's a Michael Bay movie, everything has to explode. Everything has to get destroyed.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's done beautifully. It's done fantastically. Again, I've been watching this movie for 26 years, and I still get nervous and anxious. And this movie does make me cry. And not only at the part that a lot of people would think. I actually start crying when right before they're about to actually launch on the rockets up and the president is making his speech and we're seeing all over the United States, these families and then all over the world and having people listen to or watch the TV while the president of the United States is giving this speech about these, brave unsung heroes going up into the heavens to, keep us safe and all this stuff. Just really gets me emotionally. And the soundtrack, not just the songs and the soundtrack of this movie is awesome.
The score is really good, yeah.
It's so, so good. It sounds like this is a good time to stop talking about my absolute love for this movie for the last 26 years, because, V, I know you had not revisited this movie in a long time, so I'm very curious what you thought overall of Armageddon as a revisit. Take it away. Don't break my heart too much. I don't think you're going to. It sounds like you had a really good time.
I love this film when it came out and in the early 2000s when I watched it many times. I, as you said, had not seen it in a very, very long time. It absolutely does feel like it's 2 hours and 40 minutes long.
Oh, no.
This movie is so long. And it's made longer by all of the slow-mo shots that Michael Bay uses. Everything's in slow-mo. Oh, my God.
A lot of it is in slow motion. Yeah.
This is where Zack Snyder learned it, apparently.
Oh, maybe. That's right. Yeah, or James Wan for Aquaman. All the slow-mo moments in DC movies.
As we've both said, the cast is great. The whole entire cast adds something to this film. I love all of them, from NASA to the military to Harry Stamper's crew. The NASA pilots, played by William Finchner and Jessica Steen, are also fantastic. Is it just me, or is Colonel Watts really hot?
Yeah.
And she is.
She is very beautiful.
However, this movie is so melodramatic. It does not hold up.
Oh.
There are so many hammy made-for-TV lines, as we've been talking about, right?
Hey!
I kept thinking, nobody talks like this. This is not the real world. Nobody is this honest. Nobody is this earnest. There's a lot of cringe dialogue in this film.
Oh, you think so?
Oh, yeah. There are a lot of scenes on the asteroid that I think are great, and that's where I really started to like the film again.
Yeah.
But again, it goes for way too long, and there's like 20 minutes left of the movie. I'm like, fuck, they're still on the asteroid.
Yeah, yep.
So I think this movie suffers from being too long, from being very melodramatic, but great performances. Even though there's cringe dialogue, there is very funny dialogue as well, and that's because it's delivered by very talented actors. So
sure,
I would watch this movie again at your house.
Okay.
I'm not going to watch this movie again on my own, though.
Aww.
So it's good at the beginning of this discussion you said, I don't care what anybody else says or thinks about this film.
No, I really don't.
So I'm glad. I'm not going to hurt you too bad. I don't hate it, but I don't think it's aged well.
Oh, okay.
But I did make some notes of scenes that I did really enjoy. So I did want to go through them just to temper your heartbreak a little bit.
No, my heart's not broken at all. Because as Quincy says, you're wrong. I'm right.
Yeah. Naming the asteroid, that scene is hilarious.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. I didn't want to get too much into a lot of that, but I love that moment for sure.
I loved all of the drill team's requests to the government in order to do this job.
Fun fact about that scene, all of those requests were actually written by the actors. That's not a scripted thing.
Oh, I love it.
All of those, especially Max's bring back 8-track tapes. Like, what the fuck? Like,
it's perfect for his character.
With the one guy's like, he has 2 female friends that he'd love to see made American citizens, no questions asked.
Oh, and they all don't want to pay taxes. Ever again.
Ever. Yeah. Sure, I think we can handle some of that.
Yeah. Billy Bob Thornton's so great in this film.
He's awesome.
The psychological tests when they're in that room with all the spikes is so fucking hilarious.
Oh, yeah. This might be the most uncomfortable room I've ever been in.
Will Patton, I love Will Patton, but I prefer him in Remember the Titans. I actually went on YouTube and watched a couple scenes of Will Patton in Remember the Titans after watching this movie because I was reminded of how good of an actor he is.
He's very good.
You do not let them gain another yard. So
I haven't seen Remember the Titans in so many years, but I remember him. He was good in that movie.
It's definitely going to be on the list at some point.
Perfect.
And then Owen Wilson's like, hey, so what's it going to be like up there if we actually get up to the asteroid?
Oh, yeah.
That's a really good scene.
Scariest environment imaginable.
Got it. Okay. And the last 2 things I want to mention is the armadillos, which are very cool, by the way. They are early iterations of the Batmobile from Christopher Nolan.
Oh, yeah. I could see that a little bit. Yeah. Ben Affleck was actually one of the only actors that actually got to drive one of them.
Very cool, especially because they have Recaro racing seats, which are very good car racing seats. I have them.
Did you look that up, or did you see that
I
with
saw
your
it.
own eyes?
I saw The Recaro is on the back of the seat when Ben Affleck's driving.
Okay, I was like, wow, you knew what kind of seats those were. I did not notice that the name of the seat was behind his head, so very cool.
Yeah, and I actually have those seats in one of my cars. They're so comfortable.
Oh, sweet. Very
Highly recommend. And lastly, just because I caught it, and I'm sure you did too, there is a reference to John's pick of Dr. Strangelove in this movie.
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, Buscemi gets to deliver that one.
It's so good. So
you never saw that one, huh?
He's so funny. So yes, there are a lot of parts of this movie that I did really enjoy. Like I said, there's a lot of really funny parts too that hold up, but
oh yeah.
If they edited this and took out a whole lot of slow-mo scenes and retooled some of the overdramatic dialogue, I think this could hold up in 2024.
Okay. Well, I think it does, and you don't, and that's fine. I know there's a lot of people that are on your bandwagon that don't think the movie holds up at all, and I think it's like a 50-50 with a lot of people. I think both you and I have people that would back both of us. And that's fine, but at the same time, they, like you, still enjoyed the movie. It's just not something that they're like, yeah, it was better in 1998,
Project this movie at a pool party with a bunch of beers and your friends, and you're going to have a great time.
For sure. Oh, you're going to have a blast. Yeah. Project this movie alone in my theater room, and you're going to have a blast. Absolutely.
Because I watched this movie alone on my TV.
On your
with
big-ass TV.
Sound. And I was just like, oh my God, this is so ridiculous. It's a lot more fun with others.
All right, I can see that.
So that's my take on it. Yeah.
Sweet.
It's not, I'm not eviscerating it, thank God, because I know that would
not at all.
A little bit of a chip in our friendship. So.
Not at all. Not at all. It's not like Monkey Bone or anything.
No, I didn't despise this film. Oh, but speaking of, now that we're talking about it, I went and saw the trailer to Harlan Williams' Rocket Man that you've talked about.
Oh, yeah.
And there is a 98% chance that I'm going to veto that movie. The trailer was
you're not.
so dumb.
Nope.
It looked so awful. I don't know why you think I'm going to like that movie.
Because it's funny.
Oh, God. I didn't laugh once in the trailer. I rolled my eyes a bunch of times, but we could do it. We can do it and not veto it, and just do another monkey bone where I just shit all over it.
Hey, that's fine. I don't care. I love that movie. The movie makes me laugh every time.
Now I have to think of what the hell to put with it, though.
Yeah, right. There's something. I'm sure you'll figure it out.
Okay. Anyway, back to Armageddon.
Yes, back to Armageddon. Now, I did mention several minutes ago that there's a lot of inaccuracies in this movie. However, there are some actual accuracies in this movie. Bruckheimer and the other producers of this movie were able to persuade NASA to let them shoot in a lot of restricted sections of NASA at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida.
Okay, that's cool.
Very cool. Those spots being the big pool for the buoyancy tests where they're doing weightlessness.
I want to do that.
Yeah, it's like a 400 million gallon tank.
Jesus Christ.
It's massive. It's like 40 stories deep. It's insane.
Jesus.
I can only imagine. Yeah. During that scene, there are 2 spacesuits that are used that are $10 million each.
Now, were their faces CGI'd or were they in them?
No, they're in them.
Oh,
The cast, I believe it was AJ and Steve Buscemi that were actually in the $10 million spacesuits. Really impressive stuff. The reason why NASA allowed it was because the script was so patriotic. And overall, the film and cast and crew shot around $19 billion worth of NASA equipment while making this movie.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I'd be so nervous on set.
Oh, I would too. Anytime I visited Kennedy Space Center and Johnson Space Center, and I just kind of stand like clenched because I don't want to touch even a piece of anything because I'm afraid something's going to break. And it's crazy because that's $19 billion worth of equipment that they were around while making this movie. And Truman has a wonderful line in this movie early on after the whole thing with the space shuttle in the beginning of the movie. He goes, "For years they've questioned their need for NASA. Today we're going to tell them." And I love that line because
too.
I'm a massive NASA fan. I'm a massive space fan. And I completely think we need NASA because one day we'll probably all be migrating to Mars. Maybe after you and I are gone, but hey, if it happens, maybe we'll be able to visit in another life.
I hope so, because one of my dreams is to travel through space.
Hell yeah. And NASA allowed them to shoot on the launch pad where the Apollo 1 disaster happened. So that scene where they're out there, that's the actual launch pad where the disaster of the Apollo 1 mission happened, which is still a heartbreaking moment in all of NASA. And if you've ever watched From the Earth to the Moon on HBO, they portray it magnificently, but still very, very heartbreaking. Speaking a little bit more of space and NASA, they were able to shoot on actual launch pads with a shuttle actually docked on the launch pad. There was one condition that no actor tried to get into the cockpit of the shuttle.
Oh, okay.
But guess who actually did get into the cockpit of
If
the
it's
shuttle?
not Steve Buscemi, I'm going to be so disappointed.
It was not Steve Buscemi. It was Ben Affleck actually was able to sneak into the launch pad cockpit of that shuttle. And the NASA employee was very nice about getting him out of there, apparently. I don't know exactly how that went down. But
He was young and cocky enough at the time, I bet.
Probably.
That makes sense that he went in it. But I guess that means Steve Buscemi wasn't being method.
I know, exactly, right? And going back to his Slim Pickens remark, I love when he gets off the bomb and he stands there and he goes, "Hey, Sharp, no nukes, no nukes." So funny. During the scene where the shuttles actually take off to start going up to the Russian space station.
So badass.
So badass. Actual launches, now granted, the shuttles were not, they were CGI'd over actual shuttles that were actually launched. And the producers convinced NASA to let them place 16 cameras around the launch pad. One camera actually did completely fall apart, and it was sent back to Panavision in pieces. But Panavision was able to put it back together, which is pretty cool. You know, like, it's actual launch pad. And I love the shot where the shuttle is like literally being lifted off, and you see the launch pad itself just getting just eviscerated by flame. And all the force and the heat of launching something so heavy is just, I mean, it's always impressive. Even for a movie, you know, it's amazing.
And I'm always reminded during films like these, the giant rockets they use are only to get out of our atmosphere.
Exactly.
So cool.
And
But-
they all just break up and
Drop him back.
yeah, it's so nuts.
Poor Panavision, though, their cameras.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that were totally destroyed in that stunt for Speed.
Definitely. Yeah, exactly. There you go. Day one of shooting was with Michael Clark Duncan, Ben Affleck, and Peter Stormare when they're on the asteroid together in the Armadillo.
Oh, wow. That's an interesting choice for first day because they need to have a big rapport at that point.
A little bit, yeah. So I imagine there's a lot of good pre-production, a lot of cast meetings and stuff like that, because it doesn't seem like that was the first day of shooting. A lot of movies you can kind of tell like, oh, they weren't in the zone yet,
Yeah.
and they definitely, for me anyway, it felt like they were.
Oh yeah.
That scene was also shot more as like a guinea pig-esque sort of situation for all three of them to test out those suits that they were wearing, mostly for Bruce Willis because Bruce Willis was really nervous about getting into them. At one point, Michael Bay was getting so frustrated with Ben Affleck because during a take, Ben Affleck kept leaning down and trying to like pick up something off the ground, which is not in the script or not even, remotely discussed for that scene. So Bay yelled cut, ran up to Ben Affleck and was like, what the fuck is going on? Ben Affleck's air pump had turned off, so he was starting to suffocate inside.
Oh,
and he was
Jesus
looking
Christ.
for a rock to smash open the visor that was
Oh my God.
stuck. Yeah, so he was basically trying to survive, and Michael Bay's like, what the fuck's going on? Luckily, everything worked out, and Ben Affleck did not die, because he had just won his first Oscar. So, yeah, I thought that was a pretty crazy little tidbit.
Yeah, and he still needed to get with J-Lo twice.
Yeah, exactly. Now, Michael Bay actually calls this his worst movie. Now, granted, this was likely at the time that this movie had come out because he's had several other movies come out. I wonder if that opinion would change of himself. I don't know. But at the time, he was not happy with this because of the 16-week shooting schedule and him being under the gun to really get this movie done. And in 2013, he actually apologized outright to everybody for this movie, unfortunately, and said that if he had the opportunity to reshoot the entire third act again, he would.
Does he apologize for everybody's experience on the film or the film itself?
The film itself.
Oh, I disagree with that completely. It is definitely not his worst film.
No, I don't think so either. I would say one of the Transformers movies is definitely one of his worst movies.
Too.
Critics actually were really not happy with a certain line in this movie, and it was the size of Texas line when they were discussing the size of the asteroid, because critics didn't think that was actually anywhere near true that an asteroid could be the size of Texas. But they were actually put to shame when a lot of fans of the movie started to write in the fact that in Washington, D.C., at the National Air and Space Museum exhibit of History of Asteroids, there is a diagram of several millions of years ago of an asteroid the size of Texas hitting the planet.
Yeah, that's their criticism? What the hell?
Yeah, that's one of many, because this movie does not have a high score.
No, it does not.
For
but
anything.
Of all things to nitpick, that's such a stupid thing to choose, especially because it's incorrect.
I know. Yeah. Right, yeah. I just thought that was kind of funny. I figured a lot of people would, because you know how we just really do not like critics, even though we are critics ourselves.
Well, I like that you mentioned the Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. Highly recommend anyone going to that.
I would really like to go to that
I need
at
to take
some
you.
point.
Yeah.
Now, there's a dog in this movie. In the opening, little French bulldog that Eddie Griffin is riding around Manhattan with.
Yeah.
That dog's name in the movie is Little Richard. That dog was hired specifically for the fact that he loved destroying Godzilla toys. And
Speaking
that
of
was
Roland
exactly why he needed to be cast in this movie.
That's adorable.
That dog, obviously the dog's owners got paid this, but that dog's contract.
Pissed, aren't I?
Probably. What do you think a day that dog made? Because it took 4 days to shoot the entire opening sequence in Manhattan for that meteor shower with Mr. Cooper as the taxi driver.
$100,000.
That's exactly right. $100,000. No, wait. No. You're off by $20,000. He was paid $20,000 a day. So for 4 days, he made $80,000 being a dog destroying little Godzilla toys on the side of the street. Lucky little pup. Lucky owners.
Yeah.
Really. Another funny thing about this movie, similar to The Rock, Arnold Schwarzenegger was in consideration to play Harry Stamper, and I'm so glad that it did not go to him.
No.
As much as I love Schwartz.
He plays a good construction worker in Total Recall.
Yes, he does.
But
definitely.
Bruce Willis was great in this film.
Absolutely, yeah. There are 250 effects shots that make up this movie, which is pretty low considering the fact that it's pretty much mostly, it seems like anyway, special effects shots.
Given how long the movie is, that's low.
Yeah, exactly. There was a moment on the Criterion DVD commentary where one of the producers talks about the fact that Michael Eisner ended up coming to the set of this movie to play a prank on Bruce Willis. Now, this movie was produced by Touchstone, which was a Disney affiliate at the time. This movie also had a budget of $140 million. But going back to the Michael Eisner bit, since Bruce Willis is notorious for being a bit difficult to work with, Eisner came to set and told Bruce Willis that he was fired and was being replaced by Kevin Costner. And Bruce Willis actually was very lighthearted about it and laughed it off. I thought that was kind of funny.
That's pretty great.
Yes.
I can't really picture who could have taken Bruce Willis's spot.
I don't either. Yeah, I can't see it because
not
he
Kevin
was just so
Costner.
good. No, hell no.
It needs to be someone shorter than Kevin Costner.
Yeah, exactly. This was the last film ever to be released on the Laserdisc format.
Ooh.
Yeah, then things started going DVD-wise because, Twister had just come out and was the first DVD-released movie. Helen Hunt just posted on her Instagram that she didn't know that Twister was the first DVD release of all DVD-dom. And I actually commented on her post that we discussed Twister in an episode, and I don't know if she listened to it or saw the comment, but maybe one day.
Yeah, and that's cool that she knows that now.
Yeah. This movie was shot on film, 1998. They shot 1 million feet of Kodak film while making this movie. And Kodak was so happy about that they sent them a gift basket of 6 Corbel bottles of champagne, which Michael Bay and the crew seemed to really enjoy. They weren't exactly sure why Corbel was the brand used.
Yeah, that's a pretty
especially
cheap
since
brand.
It's
What
cheap,
the hell, dude?
Yeah. My wife
this
and
is
I
why they're out of
Veuve
business
Courtois.
now.
Probably. Yeah, probably.
Damn Kodak making all sorts of bad decisions.
Seriously, I know.
They willfully went against adapting into digital media. I have no sympathy for them. They made horrible decisions.
There is a cameo by Michael Bay in this movie. I'm sure you noticed, V.
I didn't, actually.
Oh, you didn't? All right. Very similar to his cameos in Bad Boys and in Transformers and stuff like that. He plays one of the scientists when they decide to go to the Hubble telescope. It's very early on, and he literally just closes a folder and goes to a computer. It's pretty cool. I remember when I was a kid, I was like, I recognize that guy because I had seen him in Bad Boys.
Oh, speaking of cameos, I forgot to mention Kirsten Dunst actually makes a cameo in The Day After Tomorrow.
What?
She's behind Jake Gyllenhaal when he's on the payphone when the school floods.
No kidding.
Yeah,
That's
she
cool.
has a hoodie drawn up over her face.
Oh, wow. I'm going to have to keep an eye out next time I watch that movie.
Yeah.
Now, like I said earlier, this movie came out July 1st of 1998 with a $140 million budget. Domestically, it brought in $201.5 million, and worldwide, it brought in $553 million.
What?
Similar to your pick of Day After Tomorrow.
That's 2 weeks in a row our worldwide gross are the same. That's so crazy.
So crazy. But yeah, it did very well worldwide. It did very well domestically. I mean, I saw it with a packed theater. This movie was also nominated for 4 Oscars, which was awesome.
God.
Song by Diane Warren, sang by Aerosmith, sound effects editing, sound editing, and visual effects. Unfortunately, it did not win any of the 4 that it was nominated for.
I actually agree with all those nominations.
Yeah, definitely, especially for 1998.
Yeah. Although, that means it went up against Shakespeare in Love and What Dreams May Come.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty crazy.
However, I will argue that Aerosmith's song that's played in the strip club is much better than I Don't Want It As a Thing.
What Kind of Love Are You On? I love that song.
That's a good
song. That song is so badass. And that strip club is really cool, too. Never seen a strip club like that.
No,
but
it's
badass.
like a club, not just a strip club. It's great.
Massive.
Another hilarious Steve Buscemi scene.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So that is Armageddon from 1998, directed by Michael Bay, starring a whole handful of fantastic actors and cast members, and just a all-around wonderful disaster flick. It's in a weird way, it's kind of a feel-good movie for me. I do watch it if I'm in a bad mood. I laugh, I cry, just have a great time all around every time I watch it. So I'm glad, V, you had a good time as well, and I think our audience, if they have not seen it or want to revisit it, will likely be on both of our spectrums.
Yeah, I think so too. And I cry as well. I cried the other night watching this film, although that's
wonderful.
Not a litmus test for how good of a movie is, because I'm a sucker and I cry easy during movies. But yes, William Fichtner, I love him in this film, and a couple of lines that he does. First of all, up on the asteroid,
Yes.
There's one that he asks Harry to swear, and that gets me. And then also, of course, towards the end of the film, I always tear up in that moment because
definitely
I cry easily in movies.
Yeah.
Not in real life, but in movies I do.
I know, it's so weird. I cry a little bit easier in movies than I do in real life.
Oh yeah, a lot easier for me.
It's very strange.
Yeah,
I don't understand why, but it is what it is.
I don't think in 27 years we've never seen each other cry in real life, but we sat next to each other so many times on the couch just crying together watching a film.
Hey, it's all good. Brings us together.
It does, because I won't make fun of you for crying.
Exactly, like my wife does all the time. Are you crying? Yeah, no. And I've done the year 1998 before, which is a great year for movies, especially because the number one movie of 1998 is Titanic. It came out in 1997, December, but for the, fiscal year, Titanic was the highest grossing film of 1998, which will be on the list very soon. I just got the 4K. I love that movie very much. Second highest grossing film, my pick of this week, Armageddon. Number 3, Saving Private Ryan. Number 4, Something About Mary. Number 5, The Waterboy. Number 7, Deep Impact. Number 8, Roland Emmerich's Godzilla. Number 9, $50 million, Rush Hour.
Nice.
Number 10, Good Will Hunting, which won Ben Affleck his first Oscar. Number 12, A Bug's Life. Number 13, Truman Show. Number 15, Mulan. Number 17, a pick of mine from several episodes ago with Will Smith and Gene Hackman, Enemy of the State.
Oh, it's such a good movie. Wow, you covered that really early in the podcast.
Yeah, very early on. Number 20 was Vee, a favorite movie of yours, I'm sure, with David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson, The X-Files.
Oh, hell yeah.
Number 36, Vee, your pick for 2 weeks ago, our Robin Williams birthday episode, What Dreams May Come.
Mm-hmm.
Number 39, Small Soldiers. Number 47, Ronin, which is going to be on this list. And number 55, because I still think the movie's good, but I haven't revisited it in a while, starring Dustin Hoffman, Sharon Stone, and Samuel L. Jackson in Michael Crichton's Sphere.
Yeah, we both need to rewatch that film.
Yeah, we do. I've almost rewatched it like 3 times in the last 2 years, but I have not. And I have the Blu-ray, and I'm going to revisit it. I saw it in theaters, and I liked it, and I've liked it up until now. I just haven't revisited it in a while.
Yeah, maybe the next time I come over, we can watch it.
Sounds good. So again, thank you guys for joining us for our second disaster episode here. This is episode 120. Hopefully you enjoyed yourself with both of these movies. They are definitely worth revisiting. If you have not seen Armageddon, you can rent it on Apple or Amazon or anything like that for $3.99, or you can get a special subscription through Hulu to watch Armageddon. I watched my DVD copy, and Vee, you mentioned where you could watch Day After Tomorrow, and I also watched my DVD copy of that.
Yes, for Armageddon, if you have a live TV subscription, you can watch it on demand.
Sweet. So, Vee, I'm curious, would you watch Day After Tomorrow with your grandmother?
Oh, yeah, this movie's really tame other than severe weather. It's a lot of fun. I don't know if I've ever watched it with a member of my family, but anyone could watch it, teenagers and above. Like I said, it's pretty tame. And John, would you watch... how many times did you watch Armageddon with your grandma?
Oh, man, so many times. I got the VHS for Christmas one year, put it on immediately.
Did you drop it like Independence Day?
No, I didn't drop it like Independence Day. I did not. But yeah, I've watched this movie so many times. And my parents are still fans of the movie, too. So, yeah, it's one of those movies, we haven't watched it as a family together in a long time, but we used to. We watched it, every couple of years. Like, let's watch Armageddon. And we'd all sit there crying, at the moments where, everybody pretty much cried.
Mm-hmm.
This was the first movie that actually made me cry in a movie theater. Like, my dad and I both were, like, sobbing when watching this movie. And I remember we walked down, we were, like, wiping tears away. He's like, were you crying? I'm like, I wasn't crying. Were you crying?
God.
Like, when I went and saw Up with my buddy Alex, like, you're not crying, right? I'm not crying.
No,
yeah,
you can't even
totally
fake it. You can't even try to get away with not crying enough.
No.
Yeah, that's a really good milestone. I'm wondering which movie... I remember one of the first movies I ever cried in was Dances with Wolves when I was like 9 or 10, when the wolf gets killed.
Oh, yeah,
I remember
sure.
crying at that part really bad. Well, I cried in E.T. always. I watched that at home. I'm trying to think
I cry now with E.T. I didn't cry as a kid with E.T.
Oh, fascinating. Okay.
Yeah. I didn't even cry in Titanic when I saw it when I was younger. I cry now,
maybe
but I didn't cry when I saw
Titanic. Yeah, maybe that was one of the first ones.
Yeah, no, Armageddon was the first one that made me cry in a movie theater.
Speaking of Michael Bay, I remember crying a lot during Pearl Harbor when I watched it, but that was 2001.
Oh, boy.
Yeah,
wow.
I was a teenage girl.
I forgot Michael Bay did Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
That movie sucks.
It's awful.
That movie's so
it's
bad.
more overdramatic than Armageddon.
Definitely. Oh, yeah. Kate Beckinsale and Jennifer Garner. And
the first
Ben
time
Affleck.
that Ben Affleck and Jennifer Garner ever met.
That's true. Look at that.
Well, Ewan Bremner's in Pearl Harbor.
That's true, he is, and he is a saving grace a little bit in that movie.
He's a really good piece of it. But yeah, that movie's terrible. Will not ever be on this show. Sorry, everyone.
Very likely it will not. Awesome. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. We had a great time with it, it sounds like. Please do rate, review, subscribe. Follow us on all social medias, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter. We love interacting with you guys. We're getting a little bit better on the TikTok thing, so do follow us on TikTok, Movies You Miss Podcast, same with all of the other socials. For those of you that like to follow along and watch the movies that we choose for the next episode, V, why don't you tell everybody what we're doing for next week?
We decided to pick a pretty niche theme next week.
Yeah.
Biopics starring Emile Hirsch.
That's true. He is in both of our picks.
He is. He stars in my film. It's from 2007. It has a fantastic soundtrack by Eddie Vedder. Gorgeous film. It's called Into the Wild, directed by Sean Penn.
I've never seen it.
And if you want to watch it, you can watch it for free on Pluto TV. I highly recommend everyone downloading that app. It's a safe app, has a ton of available free movies on there. I've actually been able to find a lot of good ones, so recommend that app. But if you don't have it, then you can rent Into the Wild from most streaming services for $3.79.
Sounds good.
And what biopic did you choose, John?
I chose a movie from 2005 directed by Catherine Hardwicke, who directed 13, unfortunately Twilight. She has a pretty good eye. This movie's written by Stacy Peralta. Like I said, this movie came out in 2005, stars Emile Hirsch, Victor Rasuk, Johnny Knoxville, Johnny Robinson, and Heath Ledger. This is Lords of Dogtown. And if you have not seen this movie, watch it. It is awesome. You can rent it on Amazon or Apple for $3.59. It is worth your time. So good. And V, I know you haven't seen it before.
I've heard wonderful things, but I had not seen it before now.
Awesome. So another episode. Well, this next episode, we each have not seen each other's picks.
Oh, I love
so
those
that's going to be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, keep up with us again on socials. Follow along with us as we watch these next two movies for next week. And as always, here at Movies You Miss Podcast, we like to shut down with film as a form of art. And in art, all opinions are valid, except if you think.
Both our opinions can't be right about Armageddon.
Ha nice.
I respect that you love this film.
Thank you. And I respect that you kind of love this film.
Thank you.
Sweet. All right, we'll see you guys next week. Cheers, everybody.
Bye-bye.